r/datingoverthirty. Young Snipes says, how do you avoid feeling jaded from online dating? My 33 male, most recent online dating interaction has made me question whether it's actually a viable way of finding a serious relationship after trying in earnest for 7 months or so now. Matched on Hinge 33 female and went on probably the best first date I've ever had. We get straight into deep conversation on our shared religious beliefs, relationships, shared interests, life goals, travels. Hours go by and everything lines up. I checked in the day after and expressed my feelings on the evening. I thought it went well and am interested and I'd like to see her again if she's open to that. She said mutual feelings, appreciated my open communication and she's keen to hang out again, but she's going away for a week or so. So I ask if she'd like to chit chat back and forth or just catch up when she gets back, and we agree she'll get back in touch when she's back. A week or so goes by and she popped as suggested on my Bumble, so I guess she's back, but then I noticed she's just unmatched me on Hinge. I assure you I have backbone and noodles, so wouldn't have thought twice if she just didn't respond after the date or just straight rejected me. This feels like a bit of a tough one to swallow though. I feel like I'm not going be able to take anyone at their word anymore considering I felt it went well. She said she was interested and we're also part of the same religious community. I also feel a bit foolish for getting excited and telling some of my friends about it now. Most of my friends haven't done old, so they're shocked when they ask how it's going and hear that people just disappear like this, but I try and explain it's par for the course these days. How do you feel after situations like this? Edit, we didn't get to the number switch yet and we're only talking in the app. Kalidreaman87 says, bruh, all of these dating subs need to calm down. Online dating is just a way to meet people that you wouldn't normally meet. That's it, it's just a funnel to meet people. The key to online dating for long term is to create a really good screening process. Basically you can allow a lot of people in to match with you. You start the chats. You go for a couple phone calls, less than 25 minutes each. And you set up a date. So think of it like a funnel. A lot of people can match with you, but as you screen before the meet, that should get smaller. The text, the phone calls, the eventual meet shows a lot about consistency. You need consistent people in dating that are not after novelty. I had a smart, successful, similar-aged peer, had a great phone conversation. He seemed very interested, asked me questions about me, seemed to be open. Hey, and I never heard from him again. No second call, didn't have to bother with a meet. This is not an online problem. Add 2, people just think you make a profile as fast as you can, hurry up and start matching. Not at all. People need to take the time out to learn about what makes a good profile. People need to learn a screening process. I listen to a lot of dating podcasts. Learning to identify and avoidant and anxious, learning the signs of somebody that's not really ready for a relationship. Staying clear of the main things, people that just got out of relationships, people that don't know what they want, people that are not consistent. People that are not communicative. People that say one thing to you, but do something completely different by their actions. Haven't heard them texting in 3 days, let them go. You really have to have a no bullshit tolerated approach to this, and sit firm on the rules once you make them. I explained somebody this, and she told me, oh well. I just like to be spontaneous. Okay. Have fun with that. Dating online is a process. People research everything else in life. How to buy a house, how to interview for a job, learn a hobby. People need to be googling online dating. People need to read books on relationships. People need to read books on the beginning phases of dating. This is not throw the rule book out the window process. Solacretia says, take a break. Thessa Contradition 99 says, Honestly, I feel like people just are incapable of being authentic these days, or are so afraid of confrontation that they can't be honest about how they feel. I don't know if this is because the internet has outlined horror stories, or if people have just developed really bad social anxiety post-COVID, but it seems to be really prevalent these days. I don't do old, but I've heard a lot of stories like this from friends. Having said all that, sometimes it's just better to try and meet people organically. That seems to have worked out the best for me, whether it's through work outings, going out with friends, or traveling or at the gym. Any person, even friends, that I've met online don't seem to go anywhere. Met a friend on an app, thought things were good, we hung out a handful of times, and then out of nowhere they just stopped talking to me. No reason at all. I don't get it, but don't let your old experience define your perception of people. I promise that meeting people IRL can help avoid a negative mindset. But then that all depends on where you live, how open people are, etc. It took me years to finally break into certain spaces, and it takes time, but it's worth it in the end. Python Web Project says, sorry to hear that, a week is long and old, a lot can change in that meantime, especially for girls. She just changed her mind during that time and maybe meet someone else. Best is not to reach out to her anymore, delete her number and move on. Teratera222 says, I'm F32 and just back in the dating world after a 2-year relationship. Try not to let it affect you too much. Everyone is dealing with their own stuff and they don't know you well enough to make an informed decision either way. Literally, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. I've been on 3 dates. First guy seemed nice, but a little arrogant. Didn't want to judge, so gave him a chance. We text back and forth, and agreed to a second date but never met. Both of us just let it fizzle. Maybe we'll chat again, no idea. Second guy came off way too strong. Again, I didn't want to judge. After the second date he asked why we didn't kiss, and I told him I like to take things slow. He told me essentially that he respectfully r/datingoverthirty. Old boring widow says, recycling date locations. I live in a big city area with many choices for bars and restaurants. I love trying new places, but for early dates I want something reliable with ample parking and a conversation-friendly atmosphere, so I often choose from a small number of places. Tonight I realized I'd gone on at least 5 dates in the same bar in the last year alone. Once I was there with 2 different women in the same week. The bartenders don't recognize me yet, so I'm not worried about them outing me as having a go-to spot or mistaking one date for another, but they've all been really good dates at this one particular bar. The only one that didn't lead to another date was by my choice, and it was a logistical issue more than a chemistry one. I was wondering if anyone else found themselves going back to the same spots over and over for early dates. Is it convenience, or are you trying to recapture some lucky energy you had previously? Always Betextin says, I'm in a relationship now, but found the best dates were consistently at a couple of select spots. Namely that they were small/not too crowded, we were able to sit at the bar and easily break the touch barrier, since we were so close to each other, and within walking distance of a few other fun activities we could go to, other bars, walk in the park, bowling. It's not lucky energy, but having these key factors consistently made first dates go better. If you're in a really crowded and loud environment where you can't talk, sitting across the booth from each other, so you can't touch, there's bad lighting, etc. It makes things more difficult. Random3 says, I saw a knowing smirk on the barista's face at my favorite coffee shop while I was on a date, and realized this was the 3rd man I had shown up with since I started dating again, and my ex and I would go often before our breakup. It really is a great place for a first date, but now I feel too self-conscious to use it anymore. Fearless Zucchini 143 says, TBH, I like to recycle date spots as a woman out of a sense of safety, especially bars. If something goes south, the bartenders know me well enough to intervene, and have, when I've been randomly hit on. I wouldn't worry about this until you start taking photos with different partners in the same spots. Someone showed me recently that my ex is recreating every photo we took over 2 years with his new girlfriend and dressing her like mean DK. How no one's called him out yet. Grunledge says, I have a couple go-to first date locations. One of them happens to be a coffee shop / bar that I frequent solo too, and once I was there 3 times in one weekend, once solo, twice for first dates. At one point during one of the dates the bartender introduced himself and said, I see you around here all the time man, you have a good vibe. It felt like having a wingman as to why I keep go-to locations. I find that the ideal vibe for a first date is hard to capture, not too quiet or isolated, but not too noisy or crowded, classy but not intimidating, casual but not cheap, etc. There aren't that many spots in the city that hit the perfect balance. I also find that my own confidence and comfort levels are a significant predictor of how well the date will go. Scheduling the date in my home territory, not a place that is literally close to my home, but somewhere I feel comfortable and in control, helps me maintain and project that vibe, and the women I go out with tend to respond well to that. Women tend to hate going out on dates with guys who seem out of their element, and I work hard to give them the opposite experience. Bronkitty says, a coworker of mine told me she'd take all of her old dates to the same bar. At some point the staff noticed and told her they'd always accept her dates' cards instead of hers if they both offered to take the bill regardless of how much she might have saved on drinks. I think it can be convenient to be friendly with the staff in case one of your dates turns out to be a creep. Littleac0RNS says, when I 35 female was actively going on first dates and they would ask me for suggestions, I had 1 or 3 consistent places in mind because I went there often enough at another time in my life that the bartenders recognize me, so I felt safe. Latotis says, I mean he did this. And the bartenders definitely knew. Did they care? Not one iota. I tip well and I'm nice. Why would they care, much less try to sabotage it? Mischanandela Bang says, oh god. I used to wait tables and this woman used to come in with her husband all the time. Or so I thought. See, the thing is, I don't remember people's faces. I recognized her hair, it was rather distinctive, and she was very pretty. One day I was bringing her food out, and I said something about how I knew it was hers, better it's what she always orders. The look on their faces, him realizing she came there a lot and her realizing I just doubted that she was taking multiple men there. I was mortified when I realized what happened. I don't know which of us was more embarrassed. That was about 20 years ago, and I still turn red thinking about it, and I'm not very prone to being embarrassed. The funny thing is, it's not really anything to be embarrassed about. I have a few places I like now, of course I reuse them, it shouldn't be a big deal. Anyway, unless your waitress has a weird neurological condition, you should be fine. r/datingoverthirty. Thing says, dry text conversations between dates. I've been a couple of first dates and have decided to see them again as per my new rule of giving everyone a second date if I can imagine myself kissing them one day. The dates have been nice, but not fireworks or anything like that. I'm okay with that. The text conversation in cases like this seems hella dry though. How can we even keep up any kind of momentum if we have a date a week and the text conversation isn't filled with questions trying to better get to know each other? I guess the natural curiosity is lacking. What's your experience? Merriman says, I have 2 rules about texting because dating has taught me my own texting style and what works for me. 1. I rather keep texting to a low volume. I used to text a lot, different conversations at the same time with the guys I date. I realized that it created fake intimacy and idealizations. You text so much, you think you're getting to know each other, but in reality you're not. 2. I refuse to have deep conversations through texting. I rather have these conversations in person. I text for planning, light conversations. Macus Upwards Blomp says, personally I'm a bad texter. So I give a lot of grace to guys that are also bad texters. I just don't get a ton out of it, so I don't do a ton of texting, but for date planning, or occasionally shared shitposting. But I recognize many people want to connect that way, and so I agree with Zahuakat, the chemistry has to match. That's it baby says, I personally don't like to use texting to get to know someone. It just doesn't compare to talking in person. Zahuakat says, I don't date people who I don't have matching texting compatibility. If it's dry, pass. If it's not often enough, pass. If it's too often, pass. GM/GN texts every day, pass. If they type in text speak, pass. Poor grammar and spelling, pass. People in this sub always make excuses about texting and telling you to overlook these things, but I think it's actually an important issue to be compatible on. At least for me. Texting is my main form of communication with everyone I know. Once I started prioritizing texting as a compatibility, dating became less frustrating. Fedinus23 says, everyone is so different in their texting styles. I wouldn't write anyone off because of it in the early stages. As long as dates are getting planned I would just go with it. I met this great guy who was not into texting, and I ended things with him because I thought he wasn't into me because he wasn't texting. But I never asked him about texting styles or anything and just assumed. I regretted it so much because I really enjoyed our dates and he was amazing in person. Looking back he always communicated about planning our dates, confirming and making sure I had a good time. I always wonder what would have happened if I just kept going or brought up our texting styles. But it was a great lesson learned. Since then I've experienced many different texting styles, and I've found it doesn't always mean dry texting equals not a good match. I think it just depends. I don't love texting a lot in between dates myself, but that doesn't mean I wasn't excited about the person. I think it is nice when you find someone who shares the same texting vibe as you, though. Dramatic Llama Mama says, I'm trying to see if this works right now. We hit it off heavy with text conversation. Date after a day went well. He stayed strong on communicating despite having custody of his daughter for the week. We even had a second date that went really well. We agreed next date would involve a sleepover, but he never asked to set up a day. Then Friday night communication dies right down. He stops answering me. I assumed he was busy with his daughter and just playing on the phone. But then he'd go to bed, no message. Next morning same thing, he was up and no message. I message him, it takes him hours to even open it. Conversation picked up a little midday, and after some flirting he was ready to drive across town to be intimate, which I had to decline. Now today same thing, took hours to message me back. I ask him a direct question, he opened it, and then remains online while not answering. When I inquired before if he had been busy, he said he hadn't done anything all day. To me the interest is not there anymore on his side. I know enough he probably started talking to someone else Friday night. I won't embarrass myself by chasing him when he clearly doesn't want to chat. Will I entertain it if I have no other men I'm interested in? Sure. I'd rather have someone I at least met and kind of like in my bed than end up with some random guy. r/datingoverthirty. Radley8367 says, how do you stop comparing your relationship? For the first time in my life I'm in a healthy and secure relationship. I'm 31, Hes 30. I'm really happy with where it's going. It's been 6 months since our first date. We did both go overseas early on after meeting, so probably about 4 to 5 months of being exclusive. We've met families and friends now multiple times and both on the same page about the future. By all accounts, I thought it's going well. 2 friends of mine however got into relationships at the same time as my boyfriend and I've recently started to compare relationships for some reason. One today told me she's moving in with her boyfriend because her rent is too expensive. And the other told me the other day her boyfriend told her he loved her. We've discussed moving in after seeing how holidays together go and a year or so together unless it feels right prior, which makes sense to me. We've not said I love you, I've never said it, and only just realized I love my boyfriend, but I'm working up my courage to tell him, and my boyfriend hasn't had a serious relationship for a long time so might also be scared. How do I know if we're moving too slow, or how do I stop comparing? Throwaway Alden says, just remember, people move fast and ruin their relationship. Not every relationship you see is healthy. You could be sabotaging your relationship by forcing milestones that are not suitable for yours. Heck, my BF and I didn't meet friends until 6 months and family until a year. Some people get proposed to within the first month. As long as you are confident that your relationship is going well, what else do you need? Siberwick says, how do I know if we are moving too slow, or how do I stop comparing? I can tell you how you don't know, and that's by using other people's relationship as a yardstick. You know by deciding if you're happy with the way your relationship is going, and while wanting your relationship to progress is perfectly valid, I would hope for reasons other than to keep up with and brag to your social group. Yimvaspusford says, comparison is the thief of joy. It's part of why social media has been such a shit show. People exaggerate or post their best self, and others compare their middling day-to-day to that and feel lesser. Evaluate only if your relationship is good for you, meeting your needs, and whether you're good about where it's heading. You and your so aren't your friends and their SOS. So don't let their own choices/situations dictate yours. Just focus on whether it's right for you. The rest is just noise/unhelpful. It Freely 38 says, I'm really happy. Stop. End conversation. Celebrate your friends succeeding in love, but also celebrate yourself for being in a solid, wonderful relationship. Snormamus Jellies 2583 says, I think some comparisons are just human nature. But I think it's important to remember that the things we compare ourselves against often aren't reality. They're a polished version. They're the high moments, the filtered pictures, the adventures, the romantic gestures. You don't see the in-between. You don't see the day-to-day, the fights, the insecurity, etc. Hell, that romantic gesture may be an attempt to make up for a transgression. Even your one example of the friend moving in with their partner for financial reasons. God, I couldn't imagine a worse situation to be in personally. To me, that's not enviable. Now, moving in with someone because you're in love and ready to level up your relationship is beautiful, but forcing the level is generally a bad situation. I also remind myself that relationships are more marathon than race. Slow and steady wins the race because it allows time for you two to develop naturally and healthily. It could take you 5 years to move in together. But your friend's relationship might not even make it 5 years. The timeline doesn't matter if you're going at a pace that is good for you and your partner. Nayfast says, it's fine to go slow, and everyone moves at their own pace, but I'd also beware that some people are this way because they are avoidants. I will say though that moving in together just because her rent is expensive is a bad idea. That's a good way to end up stuck with someone just for financial reasons. My advice though is, if you feel like you love him, just tell him. Life is too short not to. Him trying to learn shit says, ride your own ride. Everybody is different. Some people marry their partner after meeting them drunk that same weekend. Some are engaged for several years before taking the plunge. The only constant is that they all end in a breakup or death. Most people are not in enviable relationships. This is the sad truth. If you truly knew them behind the scenes, you probably wouldn't be feeling this way. Moving in with someone because of finances is not enviable or romantic, for example. Focus on the one you're in. If you love him, and it's been 6 months, it's reasonable to let him know. If he's not there, that's also fine. Some people take more time. It may sting, but you'll get over it. I'm usually the first one to say it, but they've always been close behind. My current partner said it after a few weeks, and it gave me anxiety, but we are still together 2 years later. r/datingoverthirty. Apprehensive at 3200 says. When multi-dating in the early stages, how often do you see your dates? I'm in the sudden predicament of dating 3 great guys who are attractive, intelligent, seeking a committed relationship, and aligned with my values. I'm sensing that 2 in particular are on a quick path to catching feels. I usually don't like to multi-date for too long. If I sense the other person's feelings are stronger than mine, but I'm still uncertain at that point, I'll end things, because it's the kind of thing to do. How often do you see your dates? 1x/week each is difficult to balance with a personal life, but going any longer than that tends to dull my interest. Prettyface23x0 says. I aim for once a week, but really if there are 3 guys I'd end up feeling tired, or that I don't have enough time. Are you catching feels for any of them? Also, how do you people do this? How old are you? What's your lifestyle? Don't get me wrong, I admire this, but just makes me tired of thinking about 3 different guys lol. Namelisbud says. You'll have to adjust your personal life in the short term if you're not willing to stop seeing one of them. Even if you're meeting for a quick coffee or a dog walk or something, you don't need to invest full nights in seeing someone. Bonita Bell says. I aim for weekly. It's hard to build connection with less than that. Solid Scholar 2197 says. If it's not once a week for me, I end up sort of forgetting the person exists. Easy Contribution 530 says. Wow, how can you guys do that emotionally? Would drain me out. Did it once, like 2 dates on one day was shitty. Just one at a time for me. Astoria Flower says. Once a week is a good starting point, but later on it usually increases in frequency. Chkahead says. Once every 7 to 10 days. I've squeezed 3 dates into a Saturday span before. Odd Butterscotch 8330 says. I aim for 7 to 10 days, at least for the first few dates. After that, mostly weekly or else it can't really progress with anyone in any meaningful way. After about 3 dates I can usually either decide I want to continue seeing someone or not, and if someone has expressed deeper feelings than me, but I do want to still see them, I just nicely express I'm really honored they felt they could share their feelings with me, and I'm slower to get to that point, but I'd really like to take it slow and see if it can develop. Beneficialcover 68 says. I try for weekly. Any less and you're probably moving at a slower pace than the other people they may be seeing. Okay Hurry 4761 says. I don't even come close to getting enough matches to see multiple people in a month's time, let alone a week. Are you people or models or something? Or am I that ugly? Texas Joker 187 says. This is one of those things that's purely based on the individual and their own mental capacity and practical concerns. I know people going on dates 5 to 6 times a week with different people. I know others that can barely manage once every 2 weeks and varied in between. You have to find what works best for you. But overextending yourself can leave you with nothing. Totally Not Lame 84 says. Once or twice a week. Affectionate Erliant 45 says. One time each a week, I get 2 days off a week, seeing 5 women at once now. 3 of which play together every other week. It's much more fun. But always take off and ghost for a few days keeps them coming back wanting more. Beside have to still be a father. Hammock Bandit says. Usually only once honestly. Question 23 says. I date one person at a time. I don't consider people commodities. 3 Flaps says. Honest question, do you have sex with them? I'm having trouble knowing if this exact situation, if I sense the other person's feelings are stronger than mine but I'm uncertain. I slept with this girl on date 3, she said she wanted this for so long. We had 3 incredibly dates and spent a lot of time together, but I'm not sure about long-term compatibility for other reasons. She keeps saying she's so lucky she met me, things like that. I have trouble figuring out if it would be kinder to communicate where I'm at with her and risk hurting her and maybe putting her off, or just letting things continue to go and focus more on my own perspective of if she's a good person to be with. How anybody can do this with more than 1 or 2 people is really hard to understand, haha. Especially when physical intimacy is involved. So, is this a problem I have, or am I right in guessing that you aren't sleeping with any of them? r/datingoverthirty. Kitsune I says. Men of Reddit, do men find this approach intimidating or aggressive? M35 female, a foreigner in the USA. I've noticed significant cultural differences, especially in the dating scene. When I'm interested in someone and feel that the attraction is mutual, I like to make it clear that I'm open to going on a date. I don't mind telling a man that I'm interested in getting to know him or sharing my feelings. Due to language and cultural barriers, I prefer to be direct about my intentions. However, I worry that my approach might be perceived as too aggressive. A bit about me, I consider myself attractive, have a successful career, and enjoy the finer experiences in life. I take great care of myself, both physically and mentally. I'm very friendly, social, and smile often. I'm self-aware, knowing my strengths and shortcomings. This personality traits reflect into my romantic life as well. I'm not overly touchy or flirtatious when meeting someone for the first time. To make sure my feelings are understood, I choose to communicate them verbally. I also don't really follow conventional dating rules, like waiting a few days to text someone. If I'm interested, I'll take the initiative and send a text. I'm not in a desperate search for a partner. I do get asked out frequently, but am rarely interested in most people. Is this approach ill-advised? I'd love to hear your opinions. Edit. To clarify, I'm not randomly approaching men. These are the people I meet in a social setting where we exchange contact information. Or if when we met in a social setting and the conversation is good, I tell them I'd like to stay in touch if they don't take the first step to ask for my number. Chipface says. More of a breath of fresh air than anything. Sonia Begonia says. I'm also a woman and I tend to be straightforward. It tends to be received very well. However, I've decided to be less straightforward in the future for 2 reasons. 1. Because men usually don't get approached, they will often say yes when they are not really that into you, which is a waste of everyone's time. 2. This approach seems to select for men who aren't as certain of what they want. Part of what caused my last relationship to fall apart was that I have a strong sense of myself and my partner didn't, which meant that when I disagreed strongly with him about something, no matter how I expressed it, he would become uncertain of how he felt. That was understandably pretty scary for him. I've come to the conclusion that I need to be with people who are also certain of themselves. Thoran Ananas says. As a foreign woman who used to live in the US and was also quite straightforward, I quickly realized that guys often see that as it will be quick and easy to get her into my bed unfortunately. It often led to less effort on their part, or accusing you of being a tease/waste their time if you were forward, but then don't want to sleep with them, etc. So I adjusted to give clear hints that I'm interested, but not being as forward as I was before. Super Tyke says, basically you are a geezer bird. Rajinchakaholic says, this is what a normal healthy relationship looks like in most countries outside the US. It does, however, not at all surprise me that insecure American men would have an issue with it. Here in Australia, your approach will go a long way, though also be rather expected. Doesn't mean it's common, but it wouldn't be aggressive by any means. Lalokaka88 says, as a woman, I tell you don't. Men are hunters, they value what they work for. Rabbit Kingdom says, in my experience, it's not that you have to worry about being aggressive, but it's more about offering up too much of yourself in the early stages of a relationship. I feel, and this goes for both men and women, when someone is ready to just jump in head first, it's very off-putting. For me personally, it sets off alarm bells. If this person is so attractive, successful, in a good position in life, etc. Then 1. Why are they single? Especially over 30, and 2. Why are they so open and ready to put so much of themselves into getting to know me when they hardly know me? I think there is some value in taking things more slowly and letting things evolve naturally with some playful push and pull, rather than going at it with a completely direct approach. Nikidalicious says, this approach is fine when you're younger and the men you're meeting are often single or casually dating / in situationships, etc. In your age range, most of the men you'll meet in the world who are around 35 are likely to be in relationships, even if they are not engaged / wearing a ring yet. So you're likely to face a fair amount of rejection and or dates with men who are already seeing someone, but didn't mention it. If you're in a large / anonymous dating scene like Nick, it's fine, but be careful if you're in a smaller scene where people talk. Bitter Fiasco says, I'm also a straightforward and assertive woman when it comes to stating my intentions. I've found your mileage may vary. Some men will say yes because they're flattered and they aren't used to being in a position to say no to women. So I have found myself in uncomfortable situations where I get feelings, but the guy doesn't like me, and it took him time to realize that. Or even in the bedroom, me potentially misreading interest and taking things too far in bed prematurely. My biggest fear is that I violated a guy's consent when I was younger. I always get verbal consent now and double check even, but I was never taught to ask as a woman and wasn't well versed in it till my mid-20s. The older I get though, 30 now, the less it seems to put me in the above situation. Sorry, this may not be very helpful. I'd say stick to who you are, because you want a guy who responds well to you having a voice, opinions, and autonomy. r/datingoverthirty. Pterodactyl20 says, if someone you are just getting to know says I'm happy on my own and I'm not going to settle, would you see this as a red or green flag? Obviously, being happy on your own is a great thing and a good goal to have. However, if you are just getting to know someone, like met on an app, maybe have met in person once, and they say, would you take it as a green flag or red flag? I had someone say this to me, and I initially thought well of it, and then 3 weeks later they went from super engaged and coming on strong to being stressed out and eventually ghosting. It made me rethink the statement as a rhyme looking for any reason to shoot a person down. I need someone to be perfect, rather than a positive healthy statement. In hindsight, it just seems like a rather odd thing to say to someone who are just meeting and hoping to get to know and open up to. Thoughts? Lefasm says, for me that would mean they want something casual / FWB. It's only a red flag if you're expecting a commuted relationship from them. Namela Mesprincesa says, I don't think I'd add the I won't settle part, that just seems very defensive for no reason. But I have said before that I really like my life, so someone would have to be pretty great for me to want to change that. The person I said that to turned out to be incredibly great, and we ended up dating for 2 wonderful years. I think I may have said something similar to my current boyfriend too, when talking about what we were looking for, and here we are. Rajinchakaholic says, holy hell, the comments here are wild. Why is it so common for people to look for the worst possible interpretation of what someone says? The internet is flush with advice that you should work on yourself and be happy on your own with your own life etc. Yet someone can't say that they're happy on their own. This is absolutely something I would say, and I mean it as it's said, not the ridiculous way people are twisting it. I don't want something casual, nor am I looking for hookups etc. My interests are purely in something long term and meaningful. Yet 3 years of being alone during COVID, and I'm not allowed to admit to having got used to it, and having learned to find happiness myself. Holy crap, people. It's no wonder some people here struggle so much with sabotaging relationships. Stop trying to look for the worst motives in everyone all the time. Vitriol Wartiv says, massive red flag. Pavel Vishnayakov says, it depends. If not going to settle means not looking for a relationship, then WTF are you even in the dating game? If it's not going to lower my standards just to be in a relationship, a green flag, and, if said without too much arrogance/condescendence, could be a nice seg into the dating preferences/love language talk. Regardless of how high/weird/ridiculous those standards are, everybody is allowed to have preferences, and being able to define them more or less clearly is a huge plus in my book. Linguistic Samurai says, neither, it's just them not being interested enough. The red flag probably is that they can't communicate it better. Rustic Eggs says, not everything needs to be a red or green flag, this just seems like a true statement. I can have an opinion on the sky being blue, but it doesn't change the fact. Take it as you want. To me, if anything, it being so honest and forthcoming, it would be a green flag. Something to discuss further, but I see no insult here. The problem here is that what seemed like a honest truth turned out to be bullshit. If their approach was to come to you and say, hey, this isn't working out, sorry, that would be one thing. But ghosting you is not honest and makes the person, and not necessarily the statement, a red flag. Cartographer Priya 165 says, red flag. Anyone who is interested in a relationship with me is going to be settling. But your mileage may vary. Gsteror says, I read a few of the comments and I see that the guy ended up ghosting you anyway. Sorry about that. Ghosting sucks. My 2 cents, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with this statement, but as others have said, it depends on the context of the convo at the time. Looking at an overall picture, it seems like he went back and forward it with you a whole bunch of times. Very confusing. As someone who is currently taking a break from dating, but thinking about dipping my toe back in the water after 2 years of therapy and lots of time to think, I'd say this. Don't rush anything. If someone is putting on an act, it'll come out in time. If someone is unsure of their motivations, it'll come out in time. To me, if I'm going to show interest in someone, I better be bloody sure that I'm interested, and that I maintain that level of interest, whatever level that is, right through the early dating stages. Inconsistency is unsexy. Don't go from first gear to fifth, and back to first. I'll be taking my time with any future dating, and not getting too invested too early. r/datingoverthirty. Absoluta Confused says, update to the guy who always talk about sex. He asked me to pay him back the money he spent on me on one date. This is not a post asking for advice. And not a post to prove that I have done everything right. This is a post to share the full story. I have posted before regarding a guy who always talked about sex. We met 3 times. No sex was involved. We didn't kiss. One day he texted me at night telling me he had a bad day at work and he wanted a cuddle. He took the rejection very badly because I didn't want to cuddle. He did apologize and said he was insecure. I told him that I felt pressured, he didn't give me time as he promised, and he reacted badly after a bad day. I told him I'm unsure about him and I really needed to think about this relationship. He said that I should not make a decision based on one bad day. We did not talk since then. I forgot about it and carried on with my life. Earlier this week he sent me a couple of pictures which was taken when we were on a date. Just standing next to each other. I didn't reply. I should have replied. Today he sent me a text saying you didn't need to ghost me. So I feel like I owe him a final decision and closure. So I said to him, over text, I feel pressured, I feel not listened to, and I won't be able to respond to his sexual needs. I wished him all the best in finding a right partner. I blocked him after this. I had thought I was clear enough at that point. Obviously that wasn't enough. He reached me using other platforms and said that he believed he was a good person and myself wasn't who he had thought I was. Fair enough, he can have an opinion about me. He said that I should pay him back the money spent on a date. I pulled out my wallet, offered to pay. He said he was happy to pay for it and I didn't need to pay him back. To get his money back, he gave me his full bank details for a bank transfer. Just to clarify, we didn't go to super expensive hotel restaurants and drank a lot of alcohol. It was a pre-booked activity like a painting class. This is the only time he paid my share. The other 2 times I paid all my expenses. I feel like I dodged a bullet. Again, I'm not trying to prove that I'm right. I think I could have handled this better. I'm sharing this as this is an interesting experience. Too long, didn't read, guy asked for money back on a date after I rejected him. Limash says, if anyone has to say that they believe themselves to be a good person, that's the biggest red flag. I'm a good person, okay Hitler bye. Girl Gazing says, wow. I called him a baby on your original post and this just proved it. Adora Blebg says, this is why you block on all platforms immediately upon rejecting someone, especially someone who hasn't been treating you well. It saves you from having to deal with their that argumentative rude ass replies. Successful Print 402 says, he sounds like a potential psychopath. I have an Agadusa name says, I would tell that dude to go pound sand. You aren't getting any more from me. What is he going to do? Take you small claims court only to have the judge laugh at him and tell him to shut up and rule in favor of you. What a frick, I'm loser lol. This absurd folks says, what the actual hell? You dodged a big one, all the best. Silver Tango says, yikes, thanks for sharing. Bethsha says, similar situation but different, and I paid the guy back for movie tickets. Straight after I did he told me I didn't have to, and begged me not to go. Wide Pair 5640 says, what a loser. Zizzo21 says, man this guy don't sound right. Pay him back if you want it to be done with and he can stop harassing you. V0L4Till3 says, definitely material for r/nasa guys. Sudden Peace 9154 says, was this from old or a Reddit date or just some dating app guy? Weird behavior. Juff 2007 says, if it wasn't super expensive, why not pay him back? Seems like it could be solved easily. Jizchakazi says, cool, a validation post. Beaufort 54 says, agree you dodged a bullet. Honestly, I think you make him look like a bigger a-hole if you pay him back for your share. Do it, but not via bank info. Send a check. Good luck. Joe Snowblade says, To get his money back, he gave me his full bank details for a bank transfer. Make one final contact and tell him you want no further contact. Remind him that you still have his bank info and you currently don't have any use for it. Seeker Key 89 says, tell him to kick rocks lol. Justatron says, also block him on all other platforms. I wouldn't have even sent the money as it would reveal personal information via bank transfer. Sawyer Black says, SMD and then block. Valgm3 says, no, you're not a prostitute. You didn't promise him 6 and then renege and now he gets a refund. He can go frick himself, literally. Avocado Forever 000 says, he sounds like could have some deficits in social skills. Regardless, I would not respond further and definitely not give him $1. Maybe invoice him for your time though /s. Dinverlily says, hell to the frick no. Overall Armadillo 683 says, how tacky of him. Don't send him a cent. Snow 85072 says, wow. Speechless. Definitely dodged a bullet. Rizia King Options says, not replying to a mere acquaintance, particularly one who has been rude, is not ghosting. 3 dates does not a relationship make. Insta-block. r/datingoverthirty. Stepit says, speed dating? Has anybody ever done speed dating before? If so, what were your experiences with it? Myself, and one of my guy friends. And a female coworker of mine, I'd call her a friend, and her friend are going to do a speed dating event, followed by a cocktail lounge, where we can laugh about the pains of the event. I'm really looking forward to it. I know not to have high hopes of meeting an actual date prospect. But I just want to try something different, and make a good story out of it. Also, realizing that I'll be sitting down on a 5-minute date with my work colleague will be hilarious too. Edit. Great feedback so far. Also apologize. I realize my outlook on things here in this post is a bit negative. That's a fair call out. I don't want to belittle people solely on the basis of attending speed dating. I will soon be one of those people. I just didn't really know what to expect with these. I will be putting an effort, but I'm going in with a nonchalant attitude of we'll see how this goes. At a minimum, it'll be fun. Jazz Like Link 677 says, as a man, if I were still single I'd never subject myself to speed dating. Having to be a dancing monkey to below average women who will giddily reject you for that wrinkle on your shirt of because they don't like your shoes and then joke about you afterwards with their friends? Sounds like a blast, fellas lol. Brains for Beauty says, I did it several years ago, pre-pandemic. I went by myself, and it was totally out of my comfort zone. But it wasn't bad. I chatted with the men, I'm a woman, and those 5-minute dates all were fine. I got a couple of matches out of it, but nothing really came from it. But the experience wasn't horrible, and I think it's something I'd try again. Apprehensive 2356 says, in my experience, don't waste your time or effort. You don't have enough time to get a conversation, and it's mainly based on how you look. You're better off meeting up IRL elsewhere. Simply Fatmat says, I did it once. While I was nervous at first, I saw a woman I knew there, so that helped calm my anxiety. In the end, despite some initial awkwardness, it was kinda fun. Unfortunately, the results weren't much different than old. Out of 9 women, I got 3 matches. 2 of them were there together as friends. I went out once each with them. The first ghosted after our date. The second responded to my texts about going out again, but was non-committal about it, and then she stopped replying. The third woman, I went out with twice. We continued texting for over a week after the second date. The next week, she said she was busy and didn't have time to meet. I asked her on a Wednesday if she'd like to go to karaoke Friday. She asked where, I told her, but she didn't give an answer and instead went back to what we'd previously been discussing. Come Friday, I asked again if she was free that night. I got no response, so I assumed she was no longer interested and moved on. Was a shame, because I was starting to get a bit excited about her, but I was still nervous and wanted to take things slow this time, so I didn't make any moves on our dates. I've wondered if me not going for a kiss made her think I wasn't interested. King Jidra says, I, 36/M/Nick, actually went to a speed dating event earlier for the first time. As someone who is an avid fan of dating reality shows, including Love is Blind, I kind of approached it with the mindset, like I was someone on Love is Blind. So for starters, I only interacted with other guys prior to the event starting, getting to know them, and why they are here. Just so I could get into the socializing mindset beforehand. So the dates started, and I was surprised at the speed and efficiency of how things started and turned around. It took me around the third round of dating to really hammer down my default dating style to one that's digestible for 5 minutes of conversation. For the most part, everyone was pretty alright. But starting around the post-midway point, that's when things start getting a little weird. One of the dates I went on I think picked up from another conversation. I worked in journalism and used the entire date to debate me on the media's role in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Another date was clearly fatigued, and it was like pulling teeth to have any semblance of conversation. In the end, since it's one of those events where you're pre-matched for dates and you don't end up dating everyone, there was a free time after when I met someone who I wasn't matched with for reasons. I got a number, and when I got my results, I learned that out of the 7 dates I went on, 4 ranked me favorably. Which would be great, except all of them either were unsure or didn't want kids. I did go on the date with the one I got her number from. It was nice, but she opted not to do another date. It is what it is. My verdict on speed dating, do it. I support almost anything that will get you out of your place and meet people. Especially if you're someone who knows that the biggest barrier to dating, especially old, is just making that first mutual connection to start that conversation, but is otherwise a good hanging person at minimum. Plus, since you're forced to interact with folks you might have swiped left/Z on the app, you might surprise yourself having a good interaction with someone who might be outside the filters you. Whatisting says, I did it once. It was hilarious. I went with no expectations, just to enjoy myself. Found that people were mostly really open and fun, but no one I was desperate to carry on anything with. Put one name down, because I thought I should probably at least give someone a chance, but he did not put me down. I think the way you're going into it is very healthy and positive. For me it was great to just get out there and practice chatting to new people. r/datingoverthirty. Hikurgiral81 says, dating budget per date 2023. I looked up some older similar posts on a reasonable budget to put aside for dating monthly. Older threads has realistic amounts for the time, which was pre-pandemic, and lower food/restaurant costs. Now with high cost of food and things costing an insane amount of money for things like bowling/locked rooms/etc, I'm trying to put aside a new budget. I'm thinking $50 to $100 per date, assuming the guy I'm seeing do swap size, paying every other date. How do you guys do it? I don't believe in breaking the bank to date, and experiences and memories don't need to cost any money. Walks in the park, or going antiquing, or to a flea market and things I enjoy too. I live in a bigger city in Canada, but not the biggest ones. We're becoming a coal city, unfortunately, as are most places around the world. I wish pre-pandemic pricing would return. Texas Joker 187 says, budget is completely dependent on your personal finances and how much you date. You want to be realistic, and you need to account for potential additional dates with the same person in a short time span. Income fund manager says. Prices aren't coming down, so get used to it. Drunk Swagpants says. My friend and I were talking about how a Korean BBQ spot would be a good spot for a date. I've paid $70 to $80 total with tip, and it's all you can eat. Bibiki says. Hello from Edmonton. Usually I do coffee/tea for a first date. And then I like to get into a routine of swapping who plans/pays for the date. This way each person can pay what they're comfortable with. I've paid for dates that are about $50 each. And I've also planned dates that maybe cost $10 total. I'm like you, I don't think we need to spend money to have fun. Especially with how expensive things are. Even if I could spend more money on a date, I'm generally mindful of being more frugal than I used to be. It can be fun, I think, to set a budget for a date with the other person. Like, how much fun can we have for X amount of money? One of my favorites was a $15 date. We went to a thrift store and picked out a board game, and then went to a specialty shop and each chose an interesting, non-alcoholic drink to try. And then we found a nice spot to play the game and have our drinks. Devonian Gardens in Calgary is a lovely spot to hang out for free. If I enjoy being with someone, we don't have to be doing anything in particular to have fun. I saw the person I've been dating for about a month this weekend. They picked me up and we did my grocery shopping together, haha. While we were there, we picked out the best looking dessert that was less than $10. Then we went to my place, watched a show, and then sat at the table and had a candlelit dessert and chatted. The candles were just to make it feel a bit more fancy, haha. Adurus says. I left Calgary 7 years ago. Seems like 142 to eat is getting common here. Severe Analysis 286 says. It was expensive until I met my current GF who doesn't really drink. Perhaps a glass of wine, but compared to my ex-wife and a few of the other girls I dated, it's nothing. At first I thought it wasn't gonna work. I'm a 2 to 3 beers with dinner guy and like to have my fun, but I liked her and kept wanting to see her more. Fast forward just over 1 year and this is amazing. She's the cheapest date I've ever had. Only broke $100 one time in our 100 plus dates. No $200 plus bar tabs. No Uber/Lyft rides. No drunk drama. No huge hangovers. Although she doesn't care how much I drink, I tend to drink much less with someone who's not really into binge drinking. I've saved over $10k in the last year from going out without all the expensive alcohol and partying. Although I'm hooked on this one. If I ever date again, I think this is the way. Find someone who's not into the free drinks at your expense or encourages you to spend tons of money going out for fun. You'll save a boatload of cash and you might find a super sweet, stable, responsible person with whom you can build a strong relationship. W/O all the alcohol induced fog and expenses. Juff 2007 says. The paying every other date thing only makes sense if you always go on a second date with every single guy. Logoisego says. I also live in Calgary. I probably spent a few grand on dates in a month or two before I figured out how to do it right. The less I cared about impressing them with dinner and drinks, the better women I met, lol. Night 9665 says. First date equals $10 to $15 maximum. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.